Welcome to this deep dive, and today we're going to be looking at two really contrasting ways of approaching life.
Okay.
And it all comes from this spiritual teacher, Osho.
Right.
Um, and the concepts are struggle and surrender.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we've got a discourse of his, and I have to say, this stuff is really making me think, what about you? Are you at all familiar with these ideas?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, these ideas, they pop up everywhere, right?
Right.
All different culture, philosophies. It's really fascinating.
It is.
What I think is so interesting about Osho's take is like the way he presents these concepts.
Yeah, totally. He doesn't treat them like just these abstract, ideas.
Right.
He uses all these vivid images and stories to bring them to life.
I love that about him.
Me too. Like, for example, he talks about a hawk just soaring effortlessly through the sky,
Oh, yeah.
and that's like surrender.
Total freedom, just gliding on the wind, no effort.
It's such a powerful image.
It is.
And then he contrasts that with like someone who's like trudging through mud, carrying a heavy weight. And that's the feeling of struggle. You can almost feel the difference just hearing him describe it.
Absolutely. He's such a master at connecting these abstract concepts to our everyday experiences,
Right.
It's not just philosophy, it's something you can actually feel and relate to.
So we've got these two ways of being struggle or surrender.
Right.
But then he brings in this idea of the ego,
Okay.
and he describes it as like a stone around our neck.
Mm.
I'm curious, how does that tie into this whole thing?
Well, what he's saying is that the more we struggle, the heavier that stone becomes.
Okay.
We get weighed down by our need to control our attachments, all our fears.
So it's like we're adding rocks to that bag around our neck every time we struggle.
Exactly. And then he tells this story about Guru Nanak being offered a cup that's full of milk.
Okay.
And instead of taking the whole cup, Nanak just places a single flower on top. And
Right.
it floats effortlessly.
Wow.
I thought this was such a cool illustration of a surrendered ego.
Yeah. Not needing to take up all the space, not needing to prove anything, just like this simple, elegant gesture.
Exactly. It's a beautiful metaphor for that lightness and humility that come with surrender.
I love that.
Yeah.
Are you starting to see how this could apply to like your own life at all?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. I mean, how often do we try to force things to make things happen our way and we just end up feeling exhausted and frustrated? I know I do that all the time.
We all do. What if we could just let go of that need to control? Well, what if we could trust in something larger than ourselves? That's what Osho is pointing towards with this concept of surrender.
So we're not just talking about giving up, right? It's not about becoming passive.
No, not at all. It's about aligning our will with a greater will.
Okay.
Osho calls this Hukam, which you can understand as like the cosmic will or the natural flow of existence.
Okay, Hukam. I have a feeling we're going to be hearing that word a lot. But how do we even know what this Hukam is? How do we tap into it?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Osho suggests that Hukam speaks to us through our intuition, through those subtle nudges and gut feelings we often ignore. He uses this funny analogy of a fly on a chariot wheel.
Oh, yeah. The fly thinks it's the one making the wheel turn, totally oblivious to the horses pulling the chariot.
Exactly. It's like this hilarious way of illustrating how we often mistake ourselves as the doers when really we're more like instruments in a larger cosmic orchestra.
I love that. Okay, so if we're not the ones in control, if we're
Right.
just instruments, does that mean we shouldn't take credit for our successes or blame ourselves for our failures?
That's a great question, and it leads us to another important point that Osho makes about praise and blame.
Yeah, I get that. We all kind of crave recognition and a little praise can feel good. But Osho's saying that both praise and blame, they just feed the ego.
Yeah, exactly. They both keep us trapped in that limited sense of self. Think about it. When you're praised, don't you feel your ego inflate a little bit?
Totally.
And then when you're blamed, it deflates and you feel kind of inadequate.
Yeah, it's like we're on this constant seesaw of seeking validation and fearing rejection.
Right.
But Osho's suggesting that true humility comes from recognizing that both our successes and our failures, they ultimately come from a higher source.
Right.
So maybe it's not about taking all the credit or all the blame.
Right, because if we're just instruments in this cosmic orchestra, then who's the conductor?
Whoa.
That's where that Hukam comes back into play,
Right.
It's like recognizing the composer behind the symphony, the force that's orchestrating the whole thing.
Okay, that makes sense. But then how does Osho explain suffering?
Okay.
If there's this benevolent force guiding everything, why do we experience so much pain and hardship in the world?
Well, he suggests that suffering arises from the conflict between our individual will and this cosmic will,
Yeah.
that hukam we keep talking about. It's like
Oh.
we're trying to swim upstream against the current of existence.
So the more we resist, the more we suffer.
Well, it's not that simple. Because Osho isn't suggesting that we just passively accept everything that comes our way.
Okay.
He's inviting us to look deeper,
Yeah.
to recognize that even unpleasant experiences can be part of this larger unfolding,
Okay.
this hukam. It's like that story he tells about the king who offers his devoted servant a poisonous fruit.
Wait, the king wants to praise his loyal servant.
No, not exactly.
Yeah.
The servant, out of his deep trust and devotion to the king, accepts the fruit without hesitation. It's a radical analogy, right?
Yeah.
But it highlights this idea that even things that seem bad or painful can ultimately be for our growth and transformation if we trust the source they're coming from.
That's a tough one to swallow,
Yeah.
especially when you're going through something really challenging. But I can see how shifting your perspective to see the bigger picture, to trust in that hukam even when it's hard, could maybe ease some of the suffering.
Right. It's not about denying the pain or pretending everything's okay. It's about recognizing that even the difficult experiences can be part of a larger plan that we may not fully grasp with our limited human understanding.
Okay, so we've got this hukam, this cosmic will, and it's guiding everything, even the stuff that seems bad. How do we learn to listen to it? How do we distinguish it from all the noise in our own heads?
Well, Osho emphasizes the importance of cultivating inner listening.
Okay.
And he suggests that meditation is a powerful tool for doing this,
Mhm.
Through meditation, we can quiet the chatter of the mind, the constant stream of thoughts and worries, and create space for that subtler voice of hukam to emerge.
So it's not about emptying our minds completely, but more about creating space for that deeper wisdom to come through.
Exactly. And it's not just through meditation either.
Oh,
Osho encourages us to pay attention to synchronicities,
okay.
those meaningful coincidences that seem to pop up in our lives.
Right.
Those can also be messages from hukam nudges in the right direction.
Like when you keep running into the same person or seeing the same number everywhere, I always thought that was just my brain playing tricks on me.
Maybe, maybe not. It could also be hukam trying to get your attention, guiding you towards something. Osho suggests that we shouldn't dismiss those synchronicities,
Okay.
that we should pay attention to them, explore what they might mean.
That's fascinating. It's like those moments when you get a gut feeling about something, but you can't explain it logically. Maybe those are glimpses of hukam, too.
Absolutely. Osho would say that those intuitive hits, those gut feelings, are often expressions of hukam, our inner compass trying to guide us.
Mm.
The more we listen to them, the more aligned we become with our true path, even if that path takes us in unexpected directions.
It's like trusting in the wisdom of the universe, even when we don't know where it's leading us. But isn't that kind of scary?
It can be. Letting go of control and surrendering to something bigger than ourselves can definitely feel daunting. But Osho suggests that it's in that surrender that we discover a deeper sense of peace and freedom. It's like we're stepping off the cliff and trusting that the net will appear.
Okay, that analogy is making my palms sweat a little.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. It's about surrendering to the flow of life, trusting that even if we don't have all the answers, we're being guided towards something meaningful. So we've been talking about this whole idea of surrendering to hukam,
Right.
this cosmic will, and how it can lead to this sense of peace and freedom.
Yeah.
But how does that actually work in practice? What does surrendering look like in our everyday lives?
Well, it's not about becoming passive or giving up on our goals and dreams. Osho's really clear about that.
Yeah.
It's more about shifting our attitude, our approach. It's about recognizing when we're resisting, when we're trying to force things,
Yeah.
when we're clinging to a particular outcome.
So how do we know when we're doing that?
Right.
What are some signs that we might be out of alignment with hukam?
Well, one sign is when we're experiencing a lot of inner turmoil,
Okay.
anxiety, frustration. It's like we're swimming against the current.
Yeah.
Exhausting ourselves in the process. Another sign is when we keep running into obstacles, when things just don't seem to be flowing. Osho might say that's a sign that we're not listening to hukam, that we're trying to impose our will on the situation instead of allowing things to unfold naturally.
Okay, so let's say we recognize those signs.
Yeah.
What's the next step? How do we actually start surrendering?
It starts with awareness,
Okay.
noticing those moments when we're resisting, when we're gripping tightly.
Right.
And then instead of pushing harder, trying to force things, we can experiment with softening, with letting go. It's about trusting that there's a wisdom at play that's far greater than our limited perspective.
That sounds a lot easier said than done, though, right?
Oh, for sure.
Especially when we're so used to striving to controlling, to making things happen.
Absolutely. It's a practice,
Hmm.
a conscious choice we make moment to moment. And it's not always easy.
Great.
There will be times when we fall back into old patterns and when we forget to surrender. But the key is to keep practicing, to keep coming back to that awareness, to keep reminding ourselves that we're not in control.
It's like we're learning a new way of being in the world, a new way of relating to ourselves and everything around us.
Exactly. And as we practice surrender, as we learn to trust in Hukam, we may start to experience a shift in our perception.
Okay.
We may start to see the world differently, to appreciate the beauty and interconnectedness of all things.
You know, Osho uses this beautiful phrase, Hukami Hovan Akar,
Oh,
to describe how everything comes from this cosmic force.
yeah.
It's like saying that even the shapes and forms we see around us are manifestations of Hukam.
It's a profound way of understanding our place in the universe. We're not separate from the trees, the mountains, the stars. We're all part of this grand cosmic dance orchestrated by Hukam.
And if we can tap into that awareness, if we can surrender to that flow, it can lead to such a deep sense of gratitude and awe.
Absolutely. Because when we surrender to Hukam, we're surrendering to life itself, to the mystery and wonder of existence.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
Yeah, it has.
Thanks for sharing your expertise and for helping us unpack Osho's teachings on struggle and surrender.
My pleasure.
And for you listening, we'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. If we can embrace the idea that there's a larger force orchestrating this cosmic dance, does that make us powerless? Or does it open us up to a different kind of power? The power of aligning with that force, the power of surrendering to the flow of life. We encourage you to explore this question and see where it leads you. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Please like, share and subscribe.